She walked into the bank like anyone else. No fancy outfit, no assistant, no announcement. Just a woman in her 40s wearing a navy blouse and gray slacks, keys in one hand and a plain leather wallet in the other. Her name was Kendra Braxton. But no one knew that yet. The Monarch Federal Branch on Speedway Boulevard in Tucson, Arizona, was quiet. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A few customers waited in padded chairs near the windows. Some filled out forms. Others scrolled on their phones. Kendra stood in line behind a man in a neon landscaping shirt who chatted with the teller like it was a regular Tuesday when it was her turn. She stepped forward with a smile. "Good morning. I'd like to make a withdrawal from my personal account." The teller, a young woman named Sherry, nodded and asked for her ID and account number. Kendra handed both over. But before Sherry could type a single word, the branch manager appeared. Stephen Aldridge, early 50s, wire frame glasses, maroon tie, forced smile. "I'm sorry," he said, cutting in smoothly. "We can't process that withdrawal today." Kendra blinked. "Is there an issue with my account?" Stephen chuckled. "We've had people pretending to be someone they're not. Large withdrawals, you know how it is. I can provide additional verification if needed." Stephen didn't ask for it. Instead, he leaned on the counter like he owned it. "No offense, but this ID doesn't look like you." Kendra stayed calm. "It is me. I'm Kendra Braxton, CEO of this bank." The man behind her shifted. Sherry's hands paused on the keyboard. Stephen laughed. "Let's not waste each other's time. Come back with real verification. Or better yet, make an appointment." "Stephen, is it?" Kendra asked, voice still even. He nodded. "Did you actually check my account before deciding I wasn't who I said I was?" Stephen crossed his arms. "I don't need a computer to tell me when something feels off." That was the moment. Not when he refused the transaction. Not even when he questioned her ID. But when he said, "Feels off," as if her presence alone was suspicious, she didn't flinch. She didn't yell. She simply reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Stephen turned to Sherry. "Can you handle this? I've got calls to make." He disappeared into his office. Kendra didn't make the call yet. She looked at Sherry. "Do you see the name on that ID?" Sherry nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Kendra Braxton. And when you typed that into the system?" Sherry hesitated. "Typed." Her eyes widened. "Executive account." "CEO." Stephen came back, clipboard in hand, still smug. "Is there still an issue?" Sherry pulled up the account. "It confirms who I am. You can process the withdrawal now." Stephen scoffed. "Look, lady, you show up with no warning, dressed like you're going grocery shopping, and expect us to believe you're someone important?" Kendra's voice didn't rise. "I didn't realize my wardrobe needed approval to access my own funds. It's not about clothes. It's about protocol. You refused to check my identity. You dismissed valid ID. And now you're talking about protocol?" He turned to the staff. "Can someone get this woman out of here?" Sherry froze. Corey, a teller at the back, stood up. "Wait," he said. "That's her. I saw her speak at the Phoenix conference last year. That's Kendra Braxton." The room fell silent. Kendra stepped forward. "You had a chance to handle this with dignity. You chose something else." Then she pressed the call button. "Lorna, patch me through to our—" Yes. This location, Stephen didn't know it yet. But that one call was about to change everything. The moment Kendra pressed the call button, the air in the branch shifted. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't make a scene. But something in her stillness, how confidently she held the phone, made everyone pay attention. Sherry stood frozen behind the counter, her hands hovering just above the keyboard. Corey watched from across the room, lips parted like he was holding back a question. Even the customers noticed. The man in the landscaping shirt had put his phone away. An elderly woman with a cane leaned forward, squinting at the name on Kendra's ID. Kendra lowered her phone for a second and turned to Sherry again. "You confirmed my identity in the system, correct?" "Yes, ma'am." "Your account shows your name." "Title?" "CEO." Kendra nodded, then gently smiled. "You trusted your training." "That's all I asked for." Behind the glass wall of his office, Stephen glanced up from his desk. He saw Kendra still standing there and narrowed his eyes. But he didn't move. Not yet. He believed it would blow over. That it always did. The phone in Kendra's hand vibrated once. She answered it calmly. "Marlene?" "Yes. I'm at the Speedway branch in Tucson. I've been denied withdrawal service by a manager who ignored my ID, refused to check the system, and dismissed me in front of customers." A pause. "No. He didn't know who I was, even after I told him twice." On the other end, the tone changed. "Understood. Give us 3 minutes." Kendra ended the call and let the phone drop gently into her purse. The entire lobby remained silent, tense with unspoken questions. Then the branch phone rang. Everyone jumped. Sherry looked at it, then at Stephen's office. He was already standing. Approaching the front, Stephen picked up the phone. "Monarch Federal. This is Stephen." He went quiet. His face changed. Slowly, he looked up at Kendra. "Yes, she's still here." "Yes, right now." He hung up slowly, his fingers lingering on the receiver. Then he stepped away from the phone like it had burned him. "Miss Braxton," he said, his voice no longer smug, "can I speak with you privately for a moment?" "You had your moment," Kendra replied simply. Behind her, a few customers quietly stood, unsure if they should stay or go. But no one moved. No one wanted to miss what came next. Stephen cleared his throat. "Look, maybe things got a little out of hand. It's been a stressful day." "Stop." Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the lobby like glass. Stephen flinched. Everyone else stood perfectly still. "I don't want a speech," Kendra said, steady and clear. "I want accountability." Stephen's mouth opened, but she continued. "You ignored my ID. You refused to check the system. You dismissed me based on how I looked. That's not protocol. That's prejudice. I was following security." "No, you weren't. You made a snap judgment. You didn't ask questions. You didn't listen. And you didn't lead." The double doors at the front of the branch opened. 2 people stepped in. One, a woman in a navy suit with a Monarch HR badge. The other, tall with sharp glasses and a clipboard in hand. Regional VP Roland Pierce. They didn't look at anyone else. They walked straight to Kendra. "Kendra," Roland said with a nod. "We got here as fast as we could." She nodded back. "Appreciated." She nodded back. "Appreciated." Then Roland turned to Stephen. "We need to speak in your office." Now, Stephen's face went pale, but I didn't even. Roland cut him off. "That's not the issue." Stephen looked to Marlene for support. She shook her head. "We've already reviewed the live footage. There's nothing more to say." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Kendra stood in silence as Stephen, still clutching his clipboard like a life vest, turned and slowly walked toward the back. He had just learned the first rule of real leadership. It's not how you act when people know your name, it's how you treat them when you don't. And now, everyone had seen exactly who he was. Stephen's footsteps faded down the hallway, but the weight of what had just happened stayed behind. Kendra didn't speak right away. She just stood there, still in front of the counter, still in the same navy blouse and gray slacks, holding nothing but the silence of a room that had finally remembered how to listen. Sherry looked down at her keyboard, visibly shaken. Corey stepped out from behind his desk, his hands clasped together, as if unsure whether to apologize or applaud. The elderly woman in the corner whispered to the man beside her, about time someone did something. Then Kendra turned. "Can I speak with the staff for a moment?" she asked, voice soft now, but unmistakably firm. Dennis, the assistant manager who had stayed quiet through the entire ordeal, nodded and gestured toward the center of the branch. The tellers stepped away from their stations. Even the security guard moved in from outside. Customers watched but didn't interrupt. Somehow, it was understood this wasn't just bank business, it was something bigger. Kendra took a breath and looked at the people standing in front of her. "I didn't come here today to test anyone," she began, "and I definitely didn't come here to be recognized." Her eyes landed on Sherry. "I came in because I wanted to see the truth. How we treat people when we think no one's watching." Sherry swallowed hard, then whispered, "I should have spoken up." Kendra gave her a small, understanding smile. "You did more than you think. You followed protocol. You asked the right questions. You just needed permission to trust your instincts." Corey stepped forward. "I recognized you. I knew I should have said something sooner. I hesitated, and I'm glad you didn't stay silent forever," Kendra replied. "Because silence protects the wrong voices." Dennis, clearly shaken, finally spoke. "Stephen. He's been like that before. But none of us ever thought it would go this far." Kendra nodded slowly. "That's how patterns grow. Quietly. One ignored incident at a time. Until it becomes normal." A hush settled again. "But it's not normal," she said. "It's not protocol. It's not security. It's not leadership." Then her tone shifted, gentler, but grounded. "Leadership is showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard. It's seeing someone being dismissed and deciding that won't happen on your watch." Her eyes scanned the room again. "I've been where you are. I've stood behind a desk, pushed paperwork, answered phones, been overlooked, underestimated, ignored. So I know how easy it is to think speaking up might cost you your job." She paused, "But today, I promise you something. Silence won't protect you. Integrity will." A few heads nodded. The words were landing, rooting themselves somewhere deeper than policy or training manuals. Kendra glanced toward the back office. The door remained closed. Then she looked back to the staff. "We're going to have a formal training session next week. On respect. On leadership. On what it means to be part of Monarch Federal. And I'll be sitting in on it personally." Someone near the back murmured, "She's serious." "I'm always serious when it comes to how people are treated," Kendra said plainly. "Because if we fail each other inside these walls, we've already failed the people waiting outside them." She gave a final look, this time not as a CEO, not as a leader issuing commands, but as someone who had just reminded everyone who they were capable of being. Then she added one last line before turning away. "Don't treat someone with respect because of who they are. Treat them with respect because of who you are." And with that, she walked toward the back room to write the next policy that would protect every voice that had ever been ignored. The branch phone had gone quiet. Stephen's office door remained closed. But everyone could feel it. The air had changed. Not just because a manager had been dismissed, but because something had cracked open. Something that had been buried for a long time under fear, habit, and silence. Kendra didn't leave right away. Instead, she walked into the small break room near the back. The walls were beige, the coffee pot old, the fridge humming softly in the corner. She sat down at a round table and just breathed. Not because she was tired, but because the gravity of the day deserved a pause. She looked at her phone not to check emails or meetings, but simply to think. To remember, this wasn't the first time she'd been mistaken, dismissed, second-guessed. The difference now was that she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the Sherrys and Corys and Leonards of the world, the employees too afraid to speak, the customers too intimidated to complain, the ones who'd been told in 1,000 silent ways, "You don't belong here." She thought of a letter she'd read 6 months earlier from a woman in Flagstaff. It described almost the exact same treatment: a refusal to honor a check, an assumption of fraud, a conversation filled with condescension. At the time, HR had marked the case resolved, but something in the letter had haunted her. Today had proved it. The problem wasn't isolated. It was systemic, and it needed to be addressed loudly. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. It was Roland, the regional VP. He stepped inside quietly. "You all right?" He asked. "I'm fine," she said. "Just thinking." He took a seat across from her. "That was powerful. I didn't plan it," she replied. He nodded slowly. "Some of the folks upstairs may say it got too personal." She looked up at him, calm but firm. "It was personal." "That's the point." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You think Stephen would have treated me the same way?" "No," she said without hesitation. "You're tall, white, wearing a VP badge and a suit. He would have called you sir and offered you coffee." Roland didn't argue. After a moment, he asked, "Do you think the team got the message?" Kendra thought of Sherry's trembling hands, Corey's guilt, Dennis's silence. "They got it," she said. "But more importantly, they felt it. And that stays longer than any email." Roland stood. "Do you want me to handle the communication to the other branches?" "No," Kendra replied. "I'll do it myself." "You planning to visit them?" She smiled slightly. "Eventually. Might even leave the suit at home again." He grinned. "I'll warn the managers." Double quotes. As he left, Kendra took one final look around the room. The chipped countertop, the vending machine, the half-used notice board. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And it had just witnessed something important. Before she walked out the door, she asked for a short announcement to be made over the intercom. A few minutes later, the staff and a few remaining customers gathered casually in the lobby again. No fanfare, no speeches, just eyes full of curiosity. Kendra stood in front of them. Today could have been something we forget, or pretend didn't happen. "But I don't want that," she said, "because it mattered." She glanced around. You all watched what happens when judgment walks in before professionalism, when status is mistaken for worth. And I hope you also saw what accountability looks like: quiet, firm, real. Then her voice softened. Leadership isn't about a title. It's about how you treat people when you think no one's watching. She paused. "If that means something to you, then take what happened today and turn it into something better tomorrow. That's all I ask." And with that, she smiled. Not the polished CEO smile, but something warmer, more human. As she picked up her bag and headed to the door, no one stopped her. But many followed her with their eyes, not because she was important, but because they knew now that she'd shown them something that mattered, something true. And as she stepped outside into the Arizona sun, the glass doors of Monarch Federal closed behind her. But the message she left behind, that stayed. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More real-life inspired stories are on the way, stories that remind us that integrity doesn't wear a name tag and leadership doesn't need to shout to be heard.